Search the internet for the phrase improve your relationships, and you can expect more than 100 million hits. That's more than 100 million. And I wonder how many even consider the relationship danger zone that John Macarthur helps you avoid. Today on Grace to You. Christians, you're supposed to be in but not of the world. But what does that mean regarding your relationships? What does Scripture say about your friendships, the person you marry, your interaction with coworkers or fellow students? What biblical principles apply to business and ministry partnerships? What about social clubs or political organizations? Well, John Macarthur answers the questions like that on today's Grace to You as he begins a series titled The Relationship Danger Zone. Well, John, based on the title, it's fairly obvious that you're saying there are boundaries that we need to set when it comes to relationships with unbelievers. Think some listeners might find that a bit harsh. I mean, we're supposed to be reaching out to unbelievers.
Yeah, that's really the key to understanding both sides of that. We are called to influence unbelievers and also to make sure they don't influence us. That's the fine line, isn't it? We have been, according to the words of Jude, like brands snatched from the burning. And now we have to go back to the fire. And at the same time that we're trying to pull people out of the fire, Jude says we have to make sure our own garments are unspotted. I mean, that is the challenge. We've been taken out of the very environment that we're sent back to. But we have to live on the fringe of that environment. We have to stay within the circle of sanctification, the circle of obedience, the circle of God's blessing. Keep yourselves in the love of God, Jude says. Keep yourself in the place where you're going to flourish in the love of God because of your virtue and your holiness and your obedience. But at the same time that you're in that circle of obedience, you're reaching back into the very flames to draw others out. This is how we live our Christian life. We live in the margin between those two worlds. We don't want to become isolated monastics and monks hiding in caves. At the same time, we don't want to get sucked into the culture. We don't want to allow the church to get sucked into the culture. It's really critical that we understand the relationship danger zone. When and why we have to be separated from the very unbelievers we are reaching. That's going to be our series. Really important. We're going to look at 2 Corinthians 6 and 7. Look, we were saved out of this, but we're left in the world to draw others to Christ. Seldom talked about vital truth. Stay with us.
Well, friend, if you've got questions about the relationships you have or want to have with unbelievers, make sure you stay tuned today. This study is going to show you how to influence unbelievers for Christ without entering what John Macarthur calls the relationship danger zone. And here he is with today's lesson.
I want you to open your Bible to 2 Corinthians chapter 6. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time introducing the message. I want to get right into the principle here because it is so very, very important. Probably this is the most familiar portion of Scripture found in 2 Corinthians. The statement that begins verse 14 may be one of the most oft-quoted portions of this marvelous epistle. It says, "Do not be bound together or unequally yoked with unbelievers." And that is the principle which is so foundational, so much a cornerstone of Christian living that we have to give our attention to it very, very carefully. Now, just at first reading, it is clear from this passage that the Apostle Paul identifies two opposing worlds, two opposing realms or spheres or kingdoms or dimensions of life. One is described and characterized by righteousness, light, Christ, believers, and the presence of God. The other is characterized or described as lawless, dark, satanic, occupied by unbelievers, and the presence of idols. Two societies, two realms, two spheres, Utterly different, utterly distinct, completely incongruous and incompatible. And the apostle says there is no possibility for people in these two kingdoms to be bound together in common work, no partnership, no fellowship, no harmony, no commonality, and no agreement does or can really exist. You say, why does he address that here? Answer, because the Corinthians were endeavoring to live in both, or at least to shuttle back and forth. They had come to Christ. In chapter 5 and verse 17, the Apostle Paul had stated that if any man is in Christ, he is a new creature. The old things passed away, behold, new things have come. Salvation is called newness of life. And the Corinthians had entered into that newness. They had come to the new and the heavenly and the life-giving and the spiritual and the true. They had come into the kingdom that is characterized by righteousness, light, Christ, and the presence of God. And there was no possibility of having a relationship of any intimacy with what was old and earthly and deadly and material and filled with lies, what was lawless and dark and satanic and idolatrous. They had been made pure, and they could have no further fellowship with what was impure. That's Paul's message, and the Corinthians needed to hear it. Why? Because they were moving back and forth between the two incompatible, incongruous realms. Like the Thessalonians, of whom Paul says, you turned to God from idols. 1 Thessalonians 1:9, they had done that. The Corinthians had turned to God from idols, but because of the influences of the pagan culture they were in, they kept going back to the old idolatry. And there was really no possibility of any agreement, any harmony, any partnership, any fellowship with that old kingdom. They were allowing themselves, because of the influence of their culture, to get sucked back into the forms of their old idolatry. So Paul has to address himself to this problem in Corinth. It was there when he wrote the first letter, 1 Corinthians, to them. It was there before 1 Corinthians when he wrote his...
And every scar is proof that what tried to kill you didn't overcome you. Struggle is the proof that you have not been overtaken by your enemy. See, everyone wants to be victorious, but no one wants to fight the enemy. See, it's the enemy that reveals the champion on the inside of you. Can you imagine a basketball game if there's only offense? 10 people out there just shooting the ball. Can you imagine a football game and there's no defense? Everybody just tossing it to each other. Everybody just running around, just looking like chickens with their head cut off. Can you imagine a sporting event if there's no adversary? See, it's the enemy that reveals the champion on the inside of you. The only way you can get the victory that you deserve and that belongs to you is go through what it is that you may be going through. And I know it gets tough and I know it gets difficult, but I'm telling you, struggle is the proof that you have not been overtaken by your enemy. Which brings me to point number 2. You got choices. These 700 men had choices. They had to choose to stay in the fight. See, in military now, you get wounded to this level, you don't have a choice. You get discharged. When these 700 men were fighting, they had choices. One of the things that I've learned is we're born looking like our parents, but we die looking like our choices. – 700 men had a choice to make. Whether I'm going to go back home with my wounds, or whether I'm going to wrap up this wound and continue to fight for what it is I'm believing in. You got choices. See, you make choices, but then choices make you. These 700 men were handpicked because they could not pick their hand. These 700 men were chosen because they had a choice. And it says that they could hit a horse's hair with the sling and a rock, which tells me not only did they decide to stay in the fight, but they decided to use what they had left to be better at what it was that they were believing for than who it was that they were known for. They had a choice whether they wanted to return home or get good at what they had left. How many times did it take them throwing a rock with a sling to hit a horse's hair 30 to 40 yards away? How many misses did it take for them to be known as those that were good at slinging a slingshot with a rock to hit a hair on the string of a tree with a rock tied to the bottom of it from 30 to 40 yards away? Do you know how far 40 yards is? There are quarterbacks that can't throw 40 yards. And you telling me these 700 men perfected their craft with what they had left good enough to take a rock in a sling and hit a horsehair 30 to 40 yards away. Some of y'all can't see the hair on your head right now. And these men had the ability to hit a horsehair 30 to 40 yards away. How many times did they have to swing the sling to determine if they were good or not? I can imagine that they had choices. I can imagine that things got tough. I can imagine the wounds that they were dealing with were severe enough for them to have a good excuse to stay home, but they didn't stop fighting. And I came to tell somebody right now, if you can fight for it, you'll fight to keep it. They had their mind made up that what has happened to me, my condition will not be my conclusion. And they didn't stop fighting. I can remember watching some highlights of my father's favorite athlete, Muhammad Ali. And he would go out and he would do all these press runs and he'd be talking trash. One particular press run was for the Rumble in the Jungle. When they were doing this, I was watching it. My dad had his chest poked out. Son, watch this. And Muhammad Ali's talking trash. And they get to the fight. And the fight is going on. And the fight goes longer than expected. And at the end of the fight, after the fight was over, you could see Muhammad Ali kind of tearing up and crying. I remember asking my dad, why is he crying? And he said, well, son, he had just been through some stuff. He had been through some pain. He'd been through some obstacles. He had been through some trials. And he knows it's a privilege to fight. And I came to tell somebody today, it's a privilege to fight. I don't know what you're believing God for, but if you can fight for it, you'll fight to keep it. I can imagine these 700 men had to make a choice whether I'm going to stay in the fight or whether I'm going to utilize my wound as an excuse to go back to where I came from. But it says that these 700 men made up in their mind, I'm not going back from where I came from. I'm going to persevere and go forward because I believe that there's more on the other side. I know you may be through some stuff, but you got the mentality, I'm still going to fight. I know you've had to overcome some obstacles, but I believe you're in this moment in time right now because you had your mind made up. I'm going to stay in the fight. Come on, look at somebody and tell them you got choices. See, you run from something, you'll find yourself running from everything. If you can run from something, you'll find yourself running from everything. They didn't quit. It got tough, but they didn't quit. It got hard, but they didn't quit. It got severe, but they didn't quit. They lost a limb, but they didn't quit. And I wonder, is there anybody listening to me right now that your mentality is, no matter how hard it gets, I'm not going to quit. No matter what the enemy or the adversary may be screaming at me, I'm not going to quit. I've been through a lot, and I've been through over, and I've been...
That, I can do this, it comes up in your spirit at a moment. You don't have the money, you don't have the experience, you don't have the background, you don't have the training, but in that moment, a faith comes on you.
Yes.
That doesn't even have any sense.
Reckless. It's stupid.
Yeah, totally insane. And that's a moment. And to hear you say the exact same thing,
yeah,
where that I can do this is almost a witness of the Holy Spirit down inside of you that informs you of something that you didn't even know that you do, And when I look at my life, when I came to Dallas and I asked him to leave me alone in the building, and I prayed and asked the Lord, is it mine? And when he gave me the go ahead, you can do this. There's a supernatural faith that comes upon you in that moment that gives you permission.
Yeah.
And releases something inside of you. And I hope people not only get the book, but I hope that they get the indicators so that they will be able to discern this moment where you won't rebuke that voice that says, I can do this, and think it's your flesh or your pride or your ego, because it almost sounds arrogant.
It does. And you're so stupid for saying it. Like, I don't know if you noticed it, but when I said it just now, I always say it with a little bit of fear because I don't want to be misunderstood. Because I mean, I can't do it, but I can. I'm like, I can't. It's like you want it, you don't want it at the same time. That's when you know you're really called. When there's something in you that says, here am I, send him, or, those kind of things. And it's like, I want it, but I don't want it. And you feel the fluctuations of your faith. And you're like, you say it, but you're like, I'm about to make a fool out of myself. And I don't know, it's just that little fine line that you have to step in by faith and say, I didn't call myself. I think you told me I could do this. And the more you take a step, the more he takes a step. And he fortifies you. And it's really crazy. It's the craziest feeling in the world. I'm my worst critic. Okay, I'm absolutely the worst. I beat myself up so bad when I get through preaching. I will always go back and say, you should have done that. You should have done this. You should have, So you can have a tendency to feel like, I'm really not called to do this. This is just my idea. I saw somebody do it, and I think here I am. I thought I could do it, but I mean, in those moments, you have to trust what you heard in your spirit, and you have to do it with clean hands and a pure heart. And when you do that, I'm telling you, God sits on something. He sits on what you just did, and when He sits on it, it's like, and you go back and you hear it, and you're like, I didn't know I said that. That was God. I didn't even know that happened. That's just God.
I'm still stuck on this because there are people who love your ministry like a fat kid loves cake, and they rather hear you preach than eat ice cream in August. And to think that you could walk off the stage and critique yourself, hard on yourself, is probably shocking to them. You have preached on stadiums internationally that people would put on their resume, and you say nothing about it. You've preached at Planet Shakers. You've been to all the way to Australia to minister the word of God to thousands and thousands of people in a stadium and demolish the place. She would never say this. I'm gonna tell you, demolish the place. You just did our Woman Art Loose event. and demolished the place on a stream. And I thought the stream had come alive. I thought, good God, I mean, you came through there like a tornado, sharing along the lines of this very book. Don't miss the moment. And you've had so many great moments, and to think that you still have insecurities.
Oh.
That's a revelation.
Jesus, I'm scared of people that don't have a little bit of an insecurity.
Yeah.
You know, really, what that means, you know, and you're right. I have a hard time saying this, but I lean on him so much, and I want to say to somebody maybe that might be watching us, you got to lean on him. And you got to, yes, there's a confidence that comes, but the confidence, there's a difference between I feel like I'm doing a mentorship moment class right now, but there's a difference between confidence and arrogance. Mm-hmm. And God sits down on that confidence. Mm-hmm. And when he sits down on that, I mean, it makes you look back and say that the excellency may be of God, mm-hmm. and not of us. Mm-hmm. And I just want to encourage somebody that might be watching, that might feel the call to ministry. You got to go through your own stuff. God's got to bring you through the fire. He's got to bring you through the struggle. You got to go through all of that. But at the end of the day, when you come out of that stuff, it makes you lean on him a little more. Mm-hmm. And you feel like, you know, God, if you don't do it, it ain't gonna be done. I can't do it. I can't help people. I can't fix this. God, COVID-19 is too big for me. How do you encourage somebody that's just lost 5 family members? I can't do it, God. But if you'll sit down on it, you know, that always goes back to the brooding of the Lord, the hovering of the Lord. One thing, before you ever need an open door, you need God to hover over your life. You need him to brood over your life, because if he'll brood over you, he'll wake up stuff. He'll bring up stuff that was, I'm not preaching your message. I'm not.
Go ahead.
You know how you do that. You said there was stuff in the earth that people couldn't even see that was there. But when he brooded over the face of the deep, all of a sudden fish began to swim and birds began to fly and trees began to grow. I'm telling you, all of that stuff was in this shy girl that was from Detroit, Michigan, that didn't have the courage to stand up and speak to 3 people, let alone the world. But because I think because I know that without him, I can't do anything, it makes him want to help me. And he's like, I gotta help that girl.
Well, he has been helping you.
He's
been helping you a whole lot. I have a spot in my driveway where I was standing many years ago on my cell phone when I called you in North Carolina. You had been here in Dallas. You were in West Virginia with us. You were with us when we moved here to Dallas. You went to North Carolina, started pastoring your own work there. And I called you on the phone and said something to the effect of, I want you to pray about something that may sound totally ridiculous. I don't even know how to bring myself to say it. But I need you to come back to Texas and consider moving into leadership in the Potter's House. And that was a moment.
Oh, come on.
That was a moment.
In 2018, it was reported there was a dramatic rise in the number of cases of demonic possession. For many of the most disturbing cases, Father Carlos Martins was often summoned.
I have seen things, very evil things.
I order you to go in the name of Christ.
I'm not leaving. We've been together too long. He needs me.
Listen to The Exorcist Files on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Fans of the hit TV show Scandal can now revisit every episode on Unpacking the Toolbox, a Scandal Rewatch podcast, hosted by the cast members behind Quinn Perkins and Huck. So, gladiators, grab some Gettysburger and relive Scandal's most iconic OMG moments.
We would be in like 110 degrees in a wool coat.
Yep.
I mean, the chafing that was going on in my pencil skirts, I deserve all the acting awards, people.
Listen to Unpacking the Toolbox, a Scandal Rewatch podcast on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Did you know Lance Bass is a Russian-trained astronaut? That he went through training in a secret facility outside Moscow, hoping to become the youngest person to go to space? Well, I ought to know, because I'm Lance Bass. And I'm hosting a new podcast that tells my crazy story and an even crazier story about a Russian astronaut who found himself stuck in space with no country to bring him down. With the Soviet Union collapsing around him, he orbited the Earth for 313 days that changed the world. Listen to The Last Soviet on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, monkey trainers, bus drivers, meter guards, you know, them people that go by and watch the meter. I don't like the word meter maid because you probably get in trouble for that now. Meter people.
You don't know what to say no more.
Yeah.
Politically correct.
The milkman. Can't say that no more either. Milk people. Male people. All of it. Welcome to the Steve Harvey Morning Show. It's about to go down. Gratitude is the attitude today that affects the altitude along the way. Got a big day in store today for us all. I'm grateful to be here, grateful to be a part of it. In spite of everything, I'm still shining.
Come on, boy.
I'm still shining. Yeah. Junior, what's on? Oh, hold on, wait, what am I doing? Shirley Strawberry, Carla Farrell, Mouth of the South, Junior, the legend of Nephew Tommy, and myself.
Come on.
Junior, what's on your mind today?
Let me ask you this, Unc. For inspiration, Unc. For inspiration for you. Because you inspire a lot of people already. Where do you get your inspiration from? Who do you turn to? Who do you look at? What are some of the things you see?
Me? Who the hell you think you turn to? Well, Tommy seems to think it's him. In a way, it is.
Oh, really? Yeah. He's correct.
Yeah, what not?
Uh-oh, Shirley. See right there? See you trying to start something.
Here go these rocks already. Nobody said nothing.
She just said what not to be.
What not to be.
I'm not even gonna go down. I'm not gonna fall into that trap. Because what he has accomplished on the Richter scale has been a major earthquake level accomplishment in his life and career.
What?
The biggest accomplishment was nobody in the family thought he was going to be a damn thing.
Here we go. Here we go.
This is true.
Overcoming all odds. Winning when they said it wasn't going to get won. Being what they said it wasn't going to ever be.
Come on now.
Going where they dare he not attempt to go.
Right.
The first time I was amazed was when his little stupid ass got into college.
I love these backhanded compliments.
I mean, actually
it's a
just
double
got
slap
it.
to him.
Wasn't on scholarship or nothing. Just actually got in on grades.
On merit.
Yeah.
Now, of course, I had gone to college also, but it was in a special Cleveland scholarship program where they was trying to get more blacks to come to Kent State. Then I went out there and got a total. To graduate, you needed 125 credits. At the end of my third year, I had 18 credits.
All right. Listen, coming up in 32
Look
minutes
at God.
after the hour.
Well, you know how good you got to be to stay 3 years with 18 credits.
We'll hear from the nephew as he runs that prank back right after this.
You're listening to the Steve Harvey Morning Show.
Have you ever watched The Exorcist and wondered, are demons real? Well, we interviewed a leading exorcist to find out, and the truth was shocking.
Tell me who you are. The one you won't get out. The one you can't.
Levitations, vomiting, spitting at the priest with an uncanny marksmanship. That has not been a movie for me.
Listen to The Exorcist Files on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Did you know Lance Bass is a Russian-trained astronaut? that he went through training in a secret facility outside Moscow, hoping to become the youngest person to go to space? Well, I ought to know, because I'm Lance Bass. And I'm hosting a new podcast that tells my crazy story and an even crazier story about a Russian astronaut who found himself stuck in space with no country to bring him down. With the Soviet Union collapsing around him, he orbited the Earth for 313 days that changed the world. Listen to The Last Soviet on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
What's up, y'all? I'm Guillermo Diaz, and I played Huck on Scandal.
And I'm Katie Lowe's, a.k.a. Quinn Perkins, and we're the hosts of Unpacking the Toolbox, the Scandal Rewatch podcast where we're talking about all the best moments of the show.
With guests like Tony Goldwyn, who always amped up the fire as President Fitzgerald Grant.
Grab your Scandal swag, your double, and join us on Unpacking the Toolbox every Thursday.
Listen to Unpacking the Toolbox on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Meaning can be rationally justified in the end, right? Because literally you can, if you're in the right state of mind, it doesn't matter what you're looking at. It doesn't have to be the Milky Way. You can just be staring at a puddle in the concrete in a parking lot, and all of a sudden that is the answer to the mystery of existence, right? So in some ways it's potentially, there's a place to stand where you can pathologize this, this hierophany of meaning. But leaving that criticism aside, the experience itself proves beyond any possibility of doubt that it's possible to have an utterly transformative, and totally satisfying encounter with the present moment that isn't itself dependent on anything happening. It's a quality of your attention. Now, neurochemically, that's something obviously that has to happen in order to allow you to pay attention that fully to anything. But there is a way of granting your attention to the present moment so that the sacredness of anything comes fully into view.
So, okay, I got a couple of questions for you on that. So let's go back to this Starry Night idea. So I want to tell you a story. I was talking to my wife today about the fact that I was going to talk to you because she's been following your meditation course. But at the same time that she's done it, she had a medical death sentence 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Fundamentally.
Yeah.
Okay, so she's been through a variety of forms of hell and has come out the other side and has changed in consequence of that. And one of the things she started doing, as well as doing your meditation course, was using the rosary. So I asked her today, she's also been talking to Jonathan Pageau, who's an extraordinarily interesting religious thinker who carves icons. He's a former French-Canadian young guy. He's very, very deep person in my estimation. In any case, she's been praying the rosary. And I said, okay, so, well, you do that and you listen to Sam's meditations. And so how does that work? And she said, well, I do the rosary first. I said, well, why do you do that, and what do you do, and how do you see them related? And she said, well, with the rosary, so she's concentrating on Mary, and she said Mary's as a conduit to Christ, and I'll explain what she meant by that in a sec. But she said, well, first it's a practice. Okay, so she does it every day. So it's an embodied practice, right? So she says the words and she moves these beads. And so she's moving her hands. And it's divided into 5 sections. And so when her attention wanders from prayer, it's brought back because there's 5 sections. Right? So you imagine you have this tendency to wander off into the default network, but by manipulating something with your hands, it ties you to the present moment.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a meditative practice that's more embodied than just sitting still, say, and she finds that useful. And while she says the words, well, we've talked a lot about what these words mean, and so in reference to the Starry Night, for example, there's this series of Renaissance paintings which are quite magnificent that show an image of Mary with 12 stars around her head, and with her foot on a serpent. And that's an allusion to the Garden of Eden because, Eve crushes the serpent beneath her foot. And this is relevant to your discussion and our discussion earlier about the deepest of all evils, right? Because that's a concern of yours. It's been a concern of mine. What's the darkest possible place? Well, the that snake in those paintings represents that. And that's why in Christianity, the snake, which is a predator, is associated with Satan, right? As what would you say, the emissary of evil or malevolent, something like that. And so because Mary has her head in the stars, she can have her foot on the serpent. And that's part of that meditation. And well, she does that before she listens to your meditation. But that's where I see the psychological link, let's say, because you want to put your psyche in the highest possible place, whatever that is. And we don't know what it is exactly, but it's something like what happens when you look up at the night sky. It's something like that. And if you do that, that means that your foot is simultaneously on that serpent.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't have any, first of all, it's wonderful that she's using the app and getting some benefit from it. I love that. And there's no, and the juxtaposition of doing the rosary with doing, what I'm recommending in the app is not as odd as you might think it is in my view. I mean, I have, it's, there's so much there's so much resonance between what I think is true and the kinds of things Jesus said, right? My issue with organized religion, every organized religion, is just that clearly what we're really talking about are deeper universal truths about the nature of mind, right? I mean, whether we limit it to human minds or just mind itself, consciousness itself. And so there's no culture, there's no religion, there's no provincial cult that has the full story. And the burden on us in every present generation, but certainly now in the 21st century, where there are all the barriers to
universalization,
all the barriers to getting information and translating from other languages, all of that's broken down. We have access to everyone's ideas, right? There've been 100 billion people, and a bunch of them have had good ideas, a bunch of them have had bad ideas, and we have access to thousands of years of human conversation.
So,
and so
maybe
my only argument,
sort out what those ideas were.
Yeah, my only argument is that we should only care about using the best ideas, and we no longer have the right to any deep, serious sectarianism. Right now, that's not to say that you can't be especially taken with Jesus and the tradition that has grown up around him, and you're kind of bored with Socrates, and so you don't spend as much time with him, and that's all fine. But the problem I've had traditionally with organized religion is religion historically is the only corner of culture where people begin saying to themselves and to their children, we're playing a totally different game over here. This is not a matter of just ideas and human beings and human conversations and ordinary books. No, these books were written by God or inspired by God, and they can't be edited. And
I think it seems to me that the danger in that, I'm not disagreeing with you, but it seems to me the danger in that is that it actually minimizes the problem of atrocity that's associated with sectarianism, because and perhaps you're not.
I'll agree with you. You can heap as many atrocities as you want on that side of the balance. I will agree with you.
Well, okay, so this.
Hi, my name is Father Mike Schmitz, and you're listening to the Bible in a Year podcast, where we encounter God's voice and live life through the lens of Scripture. The Bible in a Year podcast is brought to you by Ascension. Using the Great Adventure Bible timeline, we'll read all the way from Genesis to Revelation, discovering how the story of salvation unfolds and how we fit into that story today. This is day 43. Let's keep on trucking. We're moving ahead. We're reading from Exodus both chapters 25 and 26 today, learning about not only the temple, learning about worship, learning about the Ark of the Covenant. That's Exodus 25 and 26. Also Leviticus chapter 19. And we'll be praying today Psalm 119, verses 1 through 56. As always, I'm reading from the Revised Standard Version, the Second Catholic Edition. I'm actually using the Great Adventure Bible from Ascension. You can get your own Great Adventure Bible from Ascension at ascensionpress.com or Amazon or wherever they sell Bibles. You know how to get stuff. You know how to get stuff online, for crying out loud. If you want to get, speaking of online, a Bible in a Year reading plan, you can download to your device, to your computer. You can print it out. You can visit ascensionpress.com/Bible in a Year, print that puppy out, and then you can cross off, like I mentioned yesterday, you can cross off each day as you move along, and you'll be like, man, I'm on day 43 already. This is amazing. I'm amazing. And that's right, you are amazing. You can also subscribe to this podcast by just clicking subscribe, but I'm grateful that you are joining me today, and I cannot wait to journey with you through Scripture, Exodus 25, 26, Leviticus 19, and as I said before, Psalm 79. Let's keep on moving. Exodus chapter 25. Offerings for the tabernacle. The Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the sons of Israel, that they take for me an offering. From every man whose heart makes him willing, you shall receive the offering for me. And this is the offering which you shall receive from them: gold, silver, and bronze, blue and purple and scarlet stuff, and fine twined linen, goat's hair, tanned ram's skins, goat skins, acacia wood, oil for the lamps, spices for the anointing oil and for the fragrant incense, onyx stones, and stones for setting, for the ephod and for the breastpiece. And let them make me a sanctuary, that I may dwell in their midst, according to all that I show you concerning the pattern of the tabernacle, of all its furniture, so you shall make it." The Ark of the Covenant. They shall make an ark of acacia wood. 2 cubits and a half shall be its length, 1 cubit and a half its breadth, and 1 cubit and a half its height. And you shall overlay it with pure gold. Within and without shall you overlay it. And you shall make upon it a molding of gold round about. And you shall cast 4 rings of gold for it, and put them on its 4 feet, 2 rings on the one side of it, and 2 rings on the other side of it. You shall make poles of acacia wood, and overlay them with gold. And you shall put the poles into the rings on the sides of the ark to carry the ark by them. The poles shall remain in the rings of the ark, they shall not be taken from it. And you shall put into the ark the covenant which I shall give you. Then you shall make a mercy seat of pure gold. 2 cubits and a half shall be its length, and 1 cubit and a half its breadth. And you shall make 2 cherubim of gold. Of hammered work shall you make them, on the 2 ends of the mercy seat. Make 1 cherub on the one end, and 1 cherub on the other end. Of one piece with the mercy seat shall you make the cherubim on its 2 ends. The cherubim shall spread out their wings above, overshadowing the mercy seat with their wings, their faces one to another. Toward the mercy seat shall the faces of the cherubim be. And you shall put the mercy seat on top of the ark, and in the ark you shall put the covenant that I shall give you. There I will meet with you. And from above the mercy seat, from between the 2 cherubim that are upon the ark of the covenant, I will speak with you of all that I will give you in commandment for the sons of Israel. The table for the bread of the presence. And you shall make a table of acacia wood. 2 cubits shall be its length, 1 cubit its breadth, and 1 cubit and a half its height. You shall overlay it with pure gold, and make a molding of gold around it. And you shall make around it a frame of a handbreadth wide, and a molding of gold around the frame. And you shall make for it 4 rings of gold, and fasten the rings to the 4 corners of its 4 legs. Close to the frame the rings shall be, as holders for the poles to carry the table. You shall make the poles of acacia wood, and overlay them with gold, and the table shall be carried with these. And you shall make its plates and dishes for incense, and its flagons and bowls with which to pour libations. Of pure gold you shall make them. And you shall set the bread of the presence on the table before me always. The lampstand. And you shall make a lampstand of pure gold. The base and the shaft of the lampstand shall be made of hammered work. Its cups, its capitals, and its flowers shall be of one piece with it. And there shall be 6 branches going out of its sides, 3 branches of the lampstand out of one side of it, and 3 branches of the lampstand out of the other side of it. 3 cups made like almonds, each with capital and flower on one branch, and 3 cups made like almonds, each with capital and flower on the other branch. So for the 6 branches going out of the lampstand, and on the lampstand itself 4 cups made like almonds, with their capitals and flowers, and a capital of 1 piece with it under each pair of the 6 branches going out from the lampstand. Their capitals and their branches shall be of 1 piece with it, the whole of it, 1 piece of hammered work of pure gold. And you shall make the 7 lamps for it, and the lamps shall be set up so as to give light upon the space in front of it. Its snuffers and their trays shall be of pure gold. Of a talent of pure gold shall it be made, with all these utensils. And see that you make them after the pattern for them, which is being shown you on the mountain. The tabernacle. Moreover, you shall make the tabernacle with 10 curtains of fine twined linen, and blue and purple and scarlet stuff. With cherubim skillfully worked shall you make them. The length of each curtain shall be 28 cubits, and the breadth of each curtain 4 cubits. All the curtains shall have 1 measure. 5 curtains shall be coupled to one another, and the other 5 curtains shall be coupled to one another. And you shall make loops of blue on the edge of the outermost curtain in the first set, and likewise you shall make loops on the edge of the outmost curtain on the second set. 50 loops you shall make on the one curtain, and 50 loops you shall make on the edge of the curtain that is in the second set. The loops shall be opposite one another, and you shall make 50 clasps of gold, and couple the curtains one to the other with the clasps, that the tabernacle may be one whole. You shall also make curtains of goat's hair for a tent over the tabernacle. 11 curtains shall you make. The length of each curtain shall be 30 cubits, and the breadth of each curtain 4 cubits. The 11 curtains shall have the same measure. And you shall couple 5 curtains by themselves, and 6 curtains by themselves, and the 6th curtain you shall double over at the front of the tent. And you shall make 50 loops on the edge of the curtain that is outmost in one set, and 50 loops on the edge of the curtain